Well, as was read, we had a section of the book of Ruth that started. I think I have either lost my mind or I'm a genius. I can't decide between the two. Just teasing, but just the thought of using this book as a springboard to Christian messages, Christmas messages, certainly isn't the norm, if that's the word. But this is the beginning. This is, without this book, and we'll see this again today, that this book is integral to our nativity story and to the Christmas message. The book begins, as I read last week to you, just a bit of context, in the days when the judges ruled. And if you are familiar at all with the book of Judges, you know that the theme through the book of Judges is captured in the last book of the book, repeated a couple of times, but in chapter 21, verse 25, in those days, in Judges, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This is perhaps why Elimelech, among others, saw fit to just do their own thing, to head down to Moab in that case. But this is the capitalizing the principle of the way that people lived. And on the back of that, now comes the book of Ruth. It's as if God says, okay, you've been living without a king. Well, let me start giving you a king. And through the book of Ruth, there is the beginning stages, the glimmers of what comes to us to be, ultimately, the King of heaven. This King is announced to us. We read these verses already today. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government shall be upon his shoulder. His name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of his peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord will accomplish this. So the prophets foretold that there was a coming king. And they, in Israel to this day, is expecting a physical, literal king, which of course Jesus will be one day, but they don't recognize his kingship, even in spite of the fact that the king, they were told in Zechariah 9, verse 9, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem, behold, your king is coming to you, righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So this king was going to be coming into Jerusalem. This was going to be a sign. How would you recognize him? Who wouldn't want to be a king? Who wouldn't want to stand up and announce, oh, pick me, pick me? How are you going to tell who he really is? There's going to be a sign. This is exactly what we saw, of course, a week before the crucifixion, as Jesus rides in, and we acknowledge him and recognize him through many prophecies, that he's in fact this king. So this king, and Israel is ruling without a king. The book of Judges immediately following, it's as if not until the end of the book, but we begin to see this theme, this thread that God says, I'll give you a king. And I'll show you what a king should really look like. So we come to this delightful little book. We're in chapter 2. And I'll just give you a little parenthetical statement that comes in verse 1. This little statement in verse 1 is kind of just hanging there, is to introduce the reader to another character in this important story. We know Naomi, we know Ruth. But verse 1 says Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. So here's the first piece of information we're given about Boaz as he just gets introduced to us, just thrown into the story, so at least the reader has some orientation. He's a worthy man. Now, some translations that you have might even say a wealthy man. That is not out of line to use that translation. This word worthy man has a subtlety to it that's hard to capture immediately in English. It is translated in various ways to be strength, to be efficiency or efficient, or a provider, one who is wealthy. It has this overarching sense of somebody who has some means, a nobleman, we might say, from ancient times. It is often, the word is often used in connection with somebody who is a military leader, someone who has some military smarts about them. They're not necessarily a commander of an army, but they know what it is to be in an army. They know strategy. They know how to think. He may have been, and I am just making this up, There is no reason to think that he was, but he fits the category of somebody who was one of Gideon's 300, just a guy, but he has the ability to understand what it is to defend. That's the idea of this word. It carries this richness to it of he is a man of quality, of status, of means. We might even say, to even borrow this from the medieval times, and this is entirely from ancient, not as far back as Israel times, but we might even call him a knight. Now, they wouldn't have used that term. They wouldn't have understood him in those terms. But just to bring that up to us, something of that status. He was a man, ultimately, who provides protection and provision. This was how he's described. He's not obligated to this. This is just the way that he is introduced to us. Here's Boaz. He's a worthy man. Whoa, he's one of those. He is a significant person. Not only that, but we're told, another little tidbit of information as he gets introduced in his little parenthetical statement. He's not only a worthy man, but he's of the clan of Elimelech. So the clan of Elimelech, that is Naomi's husband who has passed away. Now the reader has some inside information that we're going to carry with us through this text. There's no question that the book was written for a reader to follow along and at points to be shocked, to be surprised. And here is Elimelech. Now this word, clan of Elimelech, this is the way that Israel functioned without the means that we do today, but oftentimes, so every family, every person was a part of a family, every family is a part of a clan, every clan was a part of a tribe. There were 12 tribes, and so for the most part, a clan was followed by a bloodline, usually through the man. The women were included in their own bloodline. So if you married into a clan, you were part of another clan, from as I understand, because of the way of your birth. But every clan had these family groupings that you might not even know everybody within that bloodline, but you were connected. This isn't something that we do, but it was part of their thinking. And clan members, everybody knew this, clan members were responsible for other clan members. It's just the way it worked in the culture of the day. In fact, this is part of the way the law is written, as we'll see later on this morning. So verse 2, as we have this little statement just thrown in there, by the way, reader, you're supposed to realize, by the way, there's a man named Boaz, he's a worthy man, and he's connected, a bloodline connected to Elimelech. Now back to the story. Verse 2. And Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I find favor. She said to her, go, my daughter. So this idea of her needing to find favor, maybe because being that she was a foreigner, maybe she had experienced some degree of prejudice or difficulty. She recognized that if she went into the field, she would not be an Israelite, that she would need to find somebody who would show her a measure of help. She recognized in herself that she didn't belong, but she is going to go out and she is going to glean. What does that mean? That means she's going to go out into the field of somebody else's farm, and while they're picking the grain, she's going to be picking along behind them. Now, we have a word for that in Canada. We call that stealing. But she's not. In fact, this you are probably well familiar with. This is, in fact, a part of the Old Testament law. Leviticus 19, for example, given to the Israelites. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge. Neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare. Neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. So when you reap, Israel, if you drop something, you leave it. And if you have edges to your field and corners to your field, don't go that far. Leave those. And this was their system of providing for the poor. The poor could find food if they were willing to work for it. There is a really good system right there. If you were lazy, if you were just good for nothing, you're going hungry. But if you couldn't make your ends meet, you could work for a meal because of the provision of the law. This again is repeated later in the very same text, Leviticus 19, when you reap your harvest of your land, you shall not reap of your field right up to its edge, nor shall you gather the gleanings of after your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. Meaning, this is who I am. This is a reflection of my nature. Behave according to my nature. Care for the poor. The second giving of the law in Deuteronomy, Deuteros is second, nomos is law, second giving of the law, Deuteronomy 24:19, it's repeated, when you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. This is an added part that isn't in the other part of the law. The Lord will bless you. You see, these people are never obligated to keep the law. This is between them and their God. And if they don't want to walk with God, if they are an Israelite who wants to be selfish, they are not going to keep this. They are commanded by God to keep this. And what's the incentive? God says to them, you do that, I'll bless you. You will not be without food. And in fact, we come across a man named Boaz, who was a man of wealth. So she is going out to do what the poor do. She knows that it's harvest time, and she is going to find a field where she can find maybe a little something in the corner of a field and bring back enough to eke out an existence. Maybe we'll get dinner tonight. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. Now, I do not want to overstate this, but in English, it's almost lost to us. Because the way that I understand the original to read, it says, she chanced to chance. She just happened. As we would say in English, as luck would have it. Now, without this little moment, do you understand the significance here? This is her making a human decision, randomly, blindly even, I'll go here. And if this choice is not made, we don't have Christmas. Everything in the Old Testament in regards to the coming of the Messiah hinges on this woman's random choice. This is where she meets Boaz. This is where the line of Christ begins. This is where the Savior comes through. If this decision doesn't happen, how close did we come? Now, I know, you know, I know, we all know. God is sovereign, and if this wasn't her choice some way, he would work out and it would still come to pass in a different story and a different world, and we all get that. But humanly speaking, God is providential in every decision. Even when you think you're doing something random and haphazard, God is in it. I don't want to overstate this, but I'm going to show you another. I'm going to take you down a rabbit trail that I think is just as significant as this moment. In Genesis 37, Joseph is given a little pack of food and told, go check on your brothers and see how they're doing out in the field. So Joseph, who is an airy-fairy 17-year-old, he's like, okay, Dad. And he goes out into the field and he's wandering around and he can't find his brothers anywhere and he doesn't know what to do about that. And he's looking here, he's looking there. Verse 37, verse 14. So he said to him, go now and see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? I'm seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, they have gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Okay, did you realize this? Here is a nameless man, an event that we don't even remember in the story of Joseph, a small random event that without we would not have the story of the Exodus. We would not have the giving of the law. A random man happened to overhear some people talking. A random guy happens to see this teenager wandering through the field, and says, oh, what are you looking for? If they didn't talk, if he hadn't heard him overhear his brothers, if he didn't tell them to go to Dothan, he wouldn't have been sold into slavery. He wouldn't have gone to Potiphar. He wouldn't have ended up bringing his father. They wouldn't have been there when the famine happened. He wouldn't have brought Israel down. They wouldn't have had the 12 tribes. Nothing would have happened except for this little tiny event, this teeny, insignificant hinge that took place that changed the world. Do you know that you are changing the world every day by your dumb little choices that on the surface seem insignificant and mean nothing? But there is a God who is working and weaving out his ultimate plan for the entire universe. He's including you and your little insignificant choices and your little thing you're doing, and you think your life doesn't matter. God is in the middle of every decision. His providence is seen in every way. And here we have, I know that was a rabbit trail, but here we have again the book of Ruth, and she happened to come into Boaz's field. Oh, really? And that's the way the reader should understand this. Oh, really? Just that lucky. And Boaz, guess what? He just happens to be coming back to his field. Behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. Now this is again just the first time that Boaz speaks, but it gives the reader information about what this man is like. Now, I know voice inflection can't be understood from a text. It could be, the Lord be with you. Yeah, the Lord be with you. That's not how it should be read. That's not the essence of what you think you're hearing. This is Boaz. He's coming in, and obviously we know immediately this man has respect for his workers in his field. He's running a business, we would say. He's respecting these people. He comes and he says, in essence, thank you for being here today to help me pick my grain. The Lord bless you. And they respond back, yeah, whatever. No. They respond back, thank you for the job. The Lord bless you. And immediately we recognize that this man is respected. He is appreciated. He is important. This is not just a throwaway little thing that he shows up and says hi and they say hi. This is meant to introduce the reader to another level of the way this man thinks and works. Boaz said to the young man who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? Check her out. That's what the original is in the Hebrew. Not exactly. He is actually asking ultimately. He doesn't know, doesn't recognize her, poor in the fields, that's a normal thing. But I've never seen her before. Whose clan is she from? What's her family connection? Give me the goods on who that is. So the way that she's expressed back, the way that the answer comes, it has nothing to do with an Israelite bloodline. The only way she's described is as that Moabite. The servant who was in charge of the reapers said, she's the young Moabite woman who came with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean after among the sheepers and gather, the sheaves among the reapers. And so she came and has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. She's a hard worker. And she's from that girl from Moab. Now Moab, I mentioned this last week, has a bit of a feel to it, to an Israelite ear. This was not a nation. The people did not get along individually, you could, maybe, but culturally opposites in every way. They had nothing to do with each other. They were very, very different. And that's the way she's described. Who is she? She's a Moabite. So you can almost imagine, this is one of the reasons that Ruth is a little nervous. I'm not from around here. I'm from the other side of the tracks. I'm trying to glean like the other poor people. I'm not. Is it okay? Or you're going to let me? And she, you can almost imagine her terror as she begins to hear the sheaves and the wheat rustling, and she looks up from her picking, and there's the boss walking towards her. She probably gulps hard. Well, what's going to do? What's he going to say? Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessel and drink what the young men have drawn." Wait, what? This was likely the last thing. And he uses the same word, the same verb tense, keep close, that we saw last week in chapter 1, if you remember, when Naomi is trying to tell Ruth to go home, and the text says that Ruth clung to Naomi. She clung to Naomi. It's the same word to say, I'm not leaving you. And then she pronounces your people, my people, your God, my God. I'm not leaving. It's the same word in Genesis where a man and a woman are to leave their families and cling to each other. That's the word. That's how strong this is. Do not go anywhere else. I'm going to protect you. Wait, what? There's no reason for this. The reader should be, the first time you're stunned. Well, what's he doing? Where's this coming from? No idea. This is pure grace. He has just of himself decided, I'm going to show favor to this woman. In fact, he even turns the whole thing on its head. This is so shocking to the first-time reader in Israel culture. This makes no sense. So, same in our country, often, I don't want to sound pejorative, but it's not unusual that immigrants have the lower-paying servant kind of positions in our society. It's not always the case. I'm not trying to sound negative. I'm just saying it's a generalism. It's true in Israel. If you were a foreigner, you did the menial tasks. And it was the women who served the men. Did you read that last sentence? When you're thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. So now the Israelites are going to serve the Moabites, and it's the men who's going to serve the woman. What just happened? He turns this whole thing upside down, and he makes this woman into a position. What is he doing? The reader's like, what happened? No idea. This is Boaz. And this is what he's doing to this woman for no explanations, apparently. Remember, he is a worthy man. And suddenly, this begins to make sense. He's acting, as it were, like a knight. His role of provision and protection, he's just acting like himself. And suddenly, we realize, this guy's a good guy. And nothing negative about Boaz is ever seen in the book of Ruth. You might have had a bad day, but we know nothing about it. She fell on her face, bowed down to the ground. This is almost an act of worship, not quite, but had said to him, why? She's stunned. Why have I found favor in your eyes? That you should notice me since, and she adds this, I'm a foreigner. You know that, right? So he answers. Boaz answered her, all that you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father, your mother, your native land. You came to live to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you've done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, for the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. This is why I am so impressed with you, what you have done, and what you're doing for Naomi, and how you've chosen a life of absolute destitution. You are a widow as a foreigner in this country. You have no defenses. You are at the mercy of everybody around you. And you chose to do this for Naomi's sake. Bless you. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. I was terrified. I was freaked out when you're coming towards me. I had no idea what was going to happen. But when you say this to me, you've given me peace. Now there's a bit of a lull here. There's a moment, we don't know, that's like a little vignette of a conversation. And then at verse 14, there's another little scene. Suddenly, cut to the end of the day. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain. And she ate until she was satisfied. She had some left over. Okay, no. The women serve the men. And the boss is the last person on earth who gets up and passes the casserole around to everybody else. No. He doesn't touch the dishes. What does the text say? What is going on? Boaz completely flips the whole script, and he is now serving a Moabite woman. This is craziness. Who is this man? When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young man, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her, and also pull out some of the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean. Do not rebuke her. So now he's an overabundance. It's not just leave her alone and let her see what she can do, see what she can get. It's now, while you're pulling a sheaf together, take a handful and throw it on the ground. And you know the law. You're not to pick it up if you dropped it. Oops, you dropped it. You have to leave it. And give her plenty more. What is he doing? What is this about? And the reader reads this and is just shocked. Who is this man? So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She took it up and went into the city. Well, aren't you happy to know that it was a full ephah? Doesn't that just help you? Oh, I thought she was going to be hungry, but no, she got an ephah. Oh, great. So what is that, 2 thimbles? What, a truckload? What is an ephah? Well, that is really actually tricky for us to know, and it's one of the reasons that the English translators still use the ancient measurement, because the precision of ancient measurements is pretty tricky. And sometimes it's a bit all over the map, and so the best we can do is start to use approximatelys. Just so you know, as I explained to you an ephah, we're kind of guessing, but it's ballpark good. Okay? So an ephah is approximately a bushel. Some people say 2/3 of a bushel. What's a bushel? It's about 6 gallons, 23 liters, approximately. Or, in weight, 40 to 50 pounds or up to 22 kilos. And approximately, she thought she might get something for breakfast, maybe the next morning. She comes home that day with enough for an entire month. So this is not a small thing. This is unheard of. This is an overabundance. No poor person goes into a field and expects to find anything to satisfy them for the entire month. They're just hoping to get through the day. What is going on? That Boaz would suddenly, out of the blue, show favor on this foreign woman. She took up and she went into the city. That tells you something about how rugged this woman is. She's carrying 50 pounds of grain on her back. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. So this is, you can see Naomi's eyes as big as they can go. What is this? And then she's like, oh, and by the way, here's my doggy bag from lunch. What? So her mother-in-law says to her, she's just all words here over top. Where did you glean today? Where have you worked? Blessed be the one who took notice of you. She told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, the man with whom I worked today is... You ever watch those TV shows where there's a competition and they're going to announce the winner? And they say, and the winner is... Then they go to a commercial break. And you wait the 2.5 minutes, you come back, and you're hanging on the edge of your seat, and then they play a little background. I've already seen this clip 45 seconds before we went to the bathroom. And they play it all again, and all the band, and the winner is... And now it's even longer. That's what this is. It's the last word of the sentence. And Naomi has eyes as big as frying pans. And they are now about to pop out of her head and make a squishy noise as they hit the wall and slide down. Because, this is going to be unbelievable. You as the reader know. You know who Boaz is. You know that he's of the clan of Elimelech. Ruth doesn't know what field she's in and who Boaz is. And you're like, ah! Naomi knows that Boaz is of the clan of Elimelech, but she doesn't know what field this came from. And you're like, yeah. The last word of that sentence, the man's name with whom I work today is Boaz. Whoa. That is a piece of information that blows the back of Naomi's head straight off. This is unbelievable. You went where? You were with who? He did what? And suddenly all the pieces come together, a random choice that starts the ball rolling until in 2023 we're celebrating Christmas because Naomi found Boaz. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. Remember that word? And Ruth, the Moabite, said, besides, he said to me, you shall keep close to my young men until they have finished all my harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be insulted. Not only this, Ruth says, he's letting me go back every single day through the entire harvest, and he's going to protect me. And Naomi says, you better do that. He is one of our redeemers. Now, what does that mean? The original Hebrew word is the word Gaal. It's sometimes translated kinsman redeemer. That is a perfectly legitimate translation. But to our culture, it doesn't carry a lot of meaning. So let me just take a quick moment here. If you're familiar with Ruth, I know you're already familiar with this phrase, but it is one that needs to be fleshed out. A kinsman redeemer, according to the Old Testament law, is obligated to a measure. They're not on the hook, but they are given the opportunity, according to the law that I've got listed there, you can look at those texts, to look after the members of your clan. Not just your immediate family, but they had the privilege, or you might say the responsibility, to act on behalf of a relative who was in trouble, who was in danger, who was in need. So they didn't have police, they didn't have military, you had kinsman redeemers. So some marauders come into your big farm, they steal your sheep, they take them off. You don't have the wherewithal, but you have somebody like Boaz, who's a worthy man. He's got some military prowess. He knows his smarts, and he knows the time of day, and he knows where these people were, and he knows how to sneak up, and he knows how to get those sheep back for you. And he's going to come to the rescue for you because he's your kinsman redeemer. He could do this with regards to finances. If you had become bankrupt and had to sell yourself, become indentured, he could buy you back. He would buy you out of debt. He could rescue you from any situation that required buying land or property. All the ownership of that property would fall to him, but it would be kept within the clan instead of being sold off to somebody else or to a foreigner. It was a kinsman redeemer. It was a man who ultimately provided protection and provision. Well, isn't that exactly what we said about this worthy man, Boaz? He is a military leader with military prowess. He acts like a knight, and he provides protection and provision. Now, hold on just a cotton-picking second here. This suddenly sounds just a little bit too familiar to us. Suddenly, if you're thinking about this, you might realize that this whole kinsman redeemer thing, this sounds a lot like Jesus. Exactly. In fact, That's exactly who Boaz is a type of. He pours out grace upon grace. He rescues the needy for no reason at all. He comes in and provides above and beyond what you expect. And he is doing this because of his bloodline connection. You say, wait a second, I don't have a bloodline connection to Jesus. Oh, you don't? You might remember how John started his Christmas story. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. So here you have this tremendous phrase of God's place of dwelling in all of eternity. And this Word was with God. He was God. And in 14 it says, and that Word became flesh. Well, that's what the incarnation is about. That's what Christmas is. This eternal Word who was always with God, before God, and he was God, equal with God. He did not regard his equality with God something to be held on to. He set aside his glory. He took on the form, the morphe of a servant, and he took on flesh. He entered into the human race. And that's how you're kin. We would not have a Redeemer if we didn't have someone who was of our kin. We needed someone to rescue us who is within the human race. But we have no one within the human race with who can do anything in a measure to please the holiness of a mighty God. So we now have suddenly, through Christ, someone who is equal to us in every way. He is 100% human. He is our kin. And he now becomes, because he is our kin, he now becomes our Redeemer. Since therefore, Hebrews 2:14, the children share in flesh and blood, that's you and me, we're all human. He himself, that's Christ, likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has power of death, that is the devil. He became one of us because it was the only means of us having redemption from a holy God. Hebrews 2:17 and 18. Therefore, he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God to make propitiation, to satisfy the wrath of God for the sins of the people. Because of him, he himself has suffered when tempted. He's able to help those who are being tempted. He became like us so that he could be a merciful, a faithful priest, someone between us and God, and to satisfy the wrath of God that is rightly being poured out on us. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. And this is figured to us, or a type of, is shown to us in the book of Ruth. You mean here you have Boaz. He treats the foreigner as if he's one of his own family. Come and eat with me. Here, let me serve you. Glean in my field. He provides a bounty. He serves the hungry at his own table. He gives more, and there's an overflow of grace and mercy. What is this? Jesus, our kinsman redeemer. You are a foreigner. You're outside of the covenant. You have no hope. You're without God. You're part of the fallen human race. You have no means of knowing God or being with God or being reconciled to God. Do all you want. There's nothing in yourself to do and appease the holiness of God and the need for justice for your moral shortcomings. You have nothing in yourself. You need someone from in the human race, someone who will treat you as a foreigner and introduce you into the family, who will serve you at his very own table, who will invite you to gather around and to include you, to just show you mercy. You deserve nothing. To show you grace. Without that, you've got nothing. That's exactly what Jesus has done. It's exactly what Jesus has done. The book ends, just to leave you hanging, with a to be continued. So she, Ruth, kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Now, if the book ends that way, I don't know about you, but that's not too satisfying. La, la, la. What happened? To be continued. That's exactly what that says. And the reader who gets to that point is like, what happens? Let's find out next week. This is the book of Ruth. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this delightful little text that we're so familiar with, but is so rich with a picture to us of what you have given to us in the manger. That truly we see that you became one of us for the purpose of reconciling us. We see in Boaz the grace and the mercy being poured out on a foreigner so mysteriously, and the inviting in. Father, you've done so much for us through Christ, our Savior. And we thank you that we can celebrate him every season. We thank you that we can be reminded of your goodness and your mercy and your love for us, poured out upon us as foreigners, separated from the commonwealth of Israel, alienated from God. We thank you for Jesus. We thank you for the opportunity to celebrate. We ask your richest blessing on us in Jesus' name.